Hello and welcome back to the FEZ show. We had an amazing race in Monaco and we're here to break down everything that happened, and alongside me for the next half an hour is the one and only Mr. Jack Pickering and Mr. Nigel Mansell himself. Oh wait, no it's not, it's Edward Hunter for the YouTube audience. Boys, welcome on in, how are you?
Yeah, cheers, Jack. Happy to be back after my small hiatus. But yeah, we've had contrasting fortunes in Formula E since, but great weekend in Monaco to get stuck into.
Yeah, hello guys. I do wonder why I get such funny looks from people on the street. It must be the haircut.
Yeah, I think people are just doing double takes, Ed. I think honestly they're just like, is that Nigel? Oh no. Nigel's lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, even small children who don't have no idea who Nigel Mansell is, they recognise it. Yeah.
Oh, boys, but let's start right. Obviously, before we get into the details and the nitty-gritty of the race, just do an overall recap in terms of people have been calling Monaco the best race Formula E has ever had. Now, I wanted to think, we've had some amazing races, and I'm sure, with your wealth of knowledge, right, we'll be able to find some races that maybe could be close or maybe could be marginally better. But Pico, I'll start with you. Like, was Monaco for you the best Formula E race, or do you think there was any others that, maybe might pip it?
Well, I'd say, for one thing, it's definitely up there. We've had some fantastic races in Formula E, and it's very rare that we do get a dull race. And so, Monaco this weekend, I'd say definitely up there. We were finally using the full Monaco layout, and it proved dividends this weekend with a fantastic race. And one thing that I did see from the weekend is, which we'll probably get into more later on in the show, is that 45-minute plus one lap race had more overtakes in it than the 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 and 2019 Monaco Formula 1 Grand Prix combined, which is magnificent. But yeah, it was just so good. We had an insane battle for the lead, 6 changes for a first position throughout the race, and yeah, it was something absolutely brilliant to watch.
Ed, your thoughts?
Usually when we have a bad race in Formula E, historically we'll be at Monaco because we'd be using a bridge layout, which is like only about 8 or 9 corners, and it's the bits of Monaco where you can't overtake, even in Formula E. But yeah, the cars are a bit smaller than Formula 1, obviously. They seem to suit, they don't have as much grip as Formula 1, they're slower than Formula 1, but they do really suit the Monaco street circuit in terms of being able to race side by side. We saw a very clear illustration of that when Mitch Evans, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, went around the outside of Antonio Costa for the lead of the race at the top of Beau Rivage, just entering Casino Square, which was an incredible move, and it was right near the barrier as well. But in terms of best Formula E race ever, I don't know. I can remember a lot of really, really good Gen 1 era races. Gen 2, there's like a couple, because we haven't had as many Gen 2 races overall. There's like a couple that sort of stand out to me, like Santiago last season, and maybe a couple ones this season have been pretty solid as well, in my opinion. But this is probably the best one of this season so far. And even though I know people after Valencia was saying, oh well, maybe there's a crisis in Formula E because of one bad race, and I think this is sort of a nice way to remind people that, hey, Formula E does still do a lot right, especially when it's at a street circuit. So yeah, I think a lot of encouraging signs from Monaco, and a lot of really good stories have come out of it.
So, Pico, in terms of overtakes, because obviously Monaco is notorious, as you said there for the Grand Prix, right? The E-Prix had more overtakes than a list of Monaco Grand Prix. So why do you think for Formula E then, were we able to put on such a show? Why do you think, we were able to have so many overtakes?
Well, yeah, as Ed alluded to, these cars are a lot smaller, which means that we can occasionally have these like side by side moves, and also added on to that, we have got the attack mode power boost, which because the strategic element is you get to have you're in a faster power mode at a different point of the race to your competitors. And for you to either go further up the field or or perhaps lose a couple places. And I think those were two very key elements, and the fact that we had these like long runs for Formula E cars, so through the tunnel down into the Nouvelle Chicane, and also up the hill into Casino Square. They were fantastic places where you could have that opportunistic move like Mitch Evans did on Antonio Felix da Costa just before that final safety car came out. And so it was I think one thing that's been said a lot about with the Monaco circuit is that in the past few years it seems like the Formula One cars have kind of outgrown the track, whereas for Formula E this is the perfect facility for them.
So do you think then, Ed, that the team principals were wrong? Let's go just take a little history lesson in Season 5. Because in Season 5, we had the option, like people were thinking, right, we've gone to Gen 2, we're going full Monaco layout. That was the original plan, okay? But the team principals seemed to veto it. They seemed to say, oh, maybe we're not ready. There was always, even though people say don't compare Formula 1 with, Formula E or Formula 1 per se, right? And, there were still people comparing Formula E this weekend, last weekend with Formula 1, with the lap times, and also comparing it with the Monaco Historique and some of the lap times from there. But considering that the race that we had, do you think the team principals were wrong or were too cautious about Gen 2 in Season 5 and using the full Monaco layout?
I would agree that they were a bit cautious, and I think you have to remember that there was a big fear that they would have to modify the Grand Prix layout to suit the Formula E cars if they were going to use it, which in the end they didn't have to do too much, because remember we were saying pre-weekend that they were going to use the 1929 version of Saint-Devote, and then they changed it to the current Formula 1 version, which still worked really well, I thought. Having a faster first corner that you could overtake into just before the uphill section at Beau Rivage that we were just talking about. And but the team principals, I remember a quote from Susie Wolf where she was basically saying, and she'd only just been made Venturi team principal at the time, but she was saying that historically that the bridge layout provided a better spectacle for Formula E. I think mainly because she thought it kept the cars closer together, which, I mean, it's true, but there was still basically nowhere to pass. I remember 2017 version of the Monaco E-Prix, we saw one pass in the whole race, which I think was Freins getting past Daniel Abt, and that was it. And it was clear, I think Lucas de Grassi even said post-race on Saturday, he was saying that basically the really short layout was basically the Gen 2 cars had outgrown it, which is why I think the Season 5 race, they all looked a bit clumsy. So we have I think what Pico was saying, we had a sort of situation where F1, the speeds are so high now, especially since the 2017 reg change in F1, where we've got these wider cars there, the big fat tyres and better aero that creates faster lap times, that they're way too much faster than Monaco. It's such a pleasure watching those qualifying laps, but still that doesn't make for amazing races at Monaco, whereas at Formula E we have a series that's actually grown in, because there was worries in the early season that, we can't use the full layout because the Gen 1 car can't get up the hill without running out of power. I remember that was a fear that a lot of people had. And it's good to see with Gen 2 that we've been able to show that we've made a bit of progress and proved a few people wrong, I think.
I suppose, Jack, that maybe turn 1 of the old shortened layout was the spectacle, because getting 24 Formula E cars into that tight little downhill section was always scary into turn 1. And we've seen so many, we saw crashes there in Season 5, and obviously the famous one in Season 1 where nearly half the field was taken out. But do you think honestly that they maybe were a bit cautious, and now that we've done the Monaco full layout, that this was probably what we should have done, maybe from Gen 2 straight away?
Well, yeah, let us not forget that 2 out of the 3 times that we had a start on the on the shorter version of Monaco, there was a crash going down that narrow hill into the Nouvelle hairpin. And so I mean, like when we saw that in Season 1, we thought, just no. And then Season 3, as Ed alluded to, it was a bit of a bore fest. And and then season 5 we saw that same crash at the start, but it was definitely high time to switch to this to the proper layout, and and as you were asking Ed a couple seconds ago, I feel that the team principals, from what they said two and a bit years ago, hang your heads in shame if anyone had even remembered that the team principals had said that beforehand.
Can I say something? Because I think it's very easy to blame the team principals, but let's not forget the drivers were calling for the Grand Prix circuit. Agag, of course, was CEO at the time, was calling for, and he was even at the race over the weekend, was calling for it. The person who was against it, dead set against it, was John Todd. And as it happens, John Todd is his term is finally coming to an end. There's finally going to be an election to replace him as FIA president, and so it almost feels like Todd has relented, because he really didn't want Formula E being compared to Formula One. He was so over worried about it. So I think it's very easy to blame the team principals, but I think John Todd ultimately had more of a say and was more responsible, in my opinion.
I suppose that has, just from a side note from what you've just said there, because I think as a leading question, Jack, is very quickly, is John Todd has been quite protective of Formula E, especially with what he said in the media about, painting Formula E in a brighter light. And maybe it's quite nice in a sense that John Todd is trying to protect Formula E, is trying to make sure that the series grows, but questioning whether or not it's done in the right manner, in asking the media to make sure everything's positive and hunky-dory about Formula E, and maybe the way he's gone about it, maybe not having a race on the Formula E track was actually not protecting Formula E, was actually maybe harming it more.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record. We just showed that Formula E can do the Monaco Grand Prix circuit better than Formula One can, and he might want to try and protect Formula E from that, but from being the comparisons with F1, which every man and his dog has wanted to compare Formula E to Formula One since day dot. But I think the true testament isn't in the lap times. It is the number of overtakes in 1:45 minute plus 1 lap race versus 7 full length Grand Prix at Monaco, and we had more overtakes. So there you go.
Despite all of that, though, I'm still looking forward to the Monaco Grand Prix, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time, because I still love Formula One at Monaco, and I wouldn't change it for the world, even if there is no overtakes, because seeing them fly through swimming pool for me is just wow. But anyway, back to Formula E. So, before we sort of go into the race in detail, last question. Mitch Evans then. So, we talked about overtakes. We've loved overtakes, great overtakes, but what was the best overtake for you? For me, actually, I'm not going to say mine yet. But what was it for you? Because for me, I think my top two that would be Mitch Evans' pass at Beau Rivage, which was arguably with the best move of the race. But then people were saying that the Costa's move on Evans into the Nouvelle chicane, all locked up, was the best pass. So, boys, what do you think? Ed, I'll start with you.
Well, I would say the best passes were all of Sam Bird's ones, which we didn't get to see on the TV coverage, to get up from, what was it? It was something like he qualified, I think, 14th and got up to 7th in the end, which I thought was quite impressive. We sadly didn't see much of it because the race up front was so exciting. But I think I would actually say, as impressed as I was with, it was certainly a ballsy move with Mitch Evans going uphill, but he did have the benefit of attack mode. I think when Costa made the move at the very end, when Evans was running low on energy, neither of them had attack mode, and Costa had to get the brake in just right into Nouvelle chicane, locked up, nearly made contact with Mitch Evans, but just about managed to get through. So in my opinion, of those two, obviously because we're not counting all the others that we didn't see, I would say that that last one on the final lap by Costa was just about the better move.
What about
and
you,
also
Jack?
at the better time as well.
Flip a coin for me. I don't know. They were both fantastic moves, and I think that they should be heralded in their own light. And yeah, it was two fantastic moves for the lead within like 4 laps. Within like 4 laps of each other, three, 4 like racing laps within each other. So yeah, 2 fantastic moves.
So fan boost had an effect on this race, which was quite interesting. So we'll talk about that because Costa, if we remember right, when he was fighting with Robin Freins for the lead, remember Robin Freins, great overtake on Antonio Felix Costa to take the lead from pole because Costa was on pole. Freins took it, was in control of that race, but then obviously, as the race wore on, down into the tunnel, Costa used that fan boost. Ed, what do you make of that? Because obviously, fan boost for me, that's fan boost working, right? That's Formula E. They're like, yes, that's what we want. They wanted to see drivers use fan boost and fans having that, direct impact that put Costa in that position to eventually win the race, right? But maybe if he didn't have if he didn't have that fan boost, for example, he doesn't get past Robin Freins, and maybe we're screaming about Robin Freins' victory instead of a Mitch Evans.
Yeah, maybe I could possibly see that. I think it's tough to say because you could argue a couple of things. You could say, well, Da Costa had so much momentum that fan boost helped him complete the move, but he probably would have had enough momentum to get alongside anyway into the chicane. You can also say that using fan boost at the right time shows some skill from Da Costa because we saw Verne use his own fan boost at exactly the wrong time, just as there was like a yellow flag in the sector 2 because of Nick de Vries's Mercedes stranded by the side of the road. Basically had a horrible race and didn't even get to finish it. And even Mercedes finished, I don't think, because I think Van Dorn had a collision with Verline. But Verne used it basically, and it was useless because there was a wide yellow you couldn't go through because you can't overtake when there's a yellow flag. So yeah, I think it did show some skill from Da Costa to use it when he used it. All I would say is that someone like Robin Freins, to my mind, I don't think has ever won in fan boost. So for me, it's more of an issue at the sort of voting stage that I take issue with that someone like Da Costa and Van Dorn are always going to get it. Robin Freins, very, very unlikely, unless, of course, as we covered a few years ago, you use some kind of third-party cheat and get a few robots to put in a few thousand votes for you. But Formula E have apparently covered that loophole, at least that's what they say anyway. But yeah, I would say it's a bit of skill on Da Costa's part once he got it, but him getting it when Robin Freins would never have the chance and could have defended if he did, but that was never going to happen. So yeah, I that's my way of looking at it.
I'm surprised Robin Jack never gets any fan base because he's quite a good character in a sense, right? He's got that kind of chill character. He's quite funny in himself. So, I'm surprised he probably doesn't get more votes. But, what did you make of the fan boost pass? Because in retrospect, it was kind of critical to how this race turned out.
I'll be honest. This was the first time I think I've seen fan boost be used for an overtaking move in about 5 years. It really hasn't been that effective at all, and like for the amount of stick that it gets, yeah. It just didn't. That was the first time that I'd seen it in quite a few seasons, and so yeah, it was such an imperative move for the race, and yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, like, fair dues to Da Costa. I mean, like, admittedly, he did that, then he had to redo it again, as we alluded to, that fantastic overtake at the end of the race. But yeah, it was interesting to see fan boost actually in action, because I haven't seen it for so many years now.
I think I've seen some fan boost moves, maybe a bit lower down the order, maybe not for the lead. I think there has been one for the lead, maybe a good couple of seasons ago, but I have seen some fan boost moves for positions lower down. But Ed, the race really got interesting, and why it got interesting, obviously Mitch then, once that move was done by Da Costa with fan boost, Mitch was still in attack mode, was the last to get into attack mode, and obviously then breezed past both Robin Freins and Antonio Felix Da Costa on that same lap, obviously with that move at Beau Rivage that we mentioned. But the race got interesting for the same reason the Valencia race got interesting, is because we had a safety car, and that safety car caused by Rene Rast, who hit the wall at the exit of Santavot, stopped on the run up to Beau Rivage and Massenet, which caused an 8 kilowatt reduction, and caused obviously this tight energy management race, which we saw towards the end. Now, why I'm bringing that up is because in Valencia we saw the ugly side of it, right? And where it went wrong, and it was Formula E's worst day, one of its worst days, a really bad example for electric vehicles. People were calling it But now we've had one of Formula E's, on the contrast, we've had one of Formula E's best days in Monaco, and the same thing caused it. So in terms of energy reduction, surely it's still the right thing to do.
I agree, absolutely, because it's such a challenge, like I was saying after Valencia. And another thing I said after Valencia was I was bigging up Rene Rast a little bit, so I feel a bit bad that he's had such awful luck with that collision with Cassidy, which put him in the barrier and caused that safety car period. But yeah, so Evans, I think, it was very marginal actually between, I think, Evans was only like a percentage lower than everyone else, or something, a very small amount. So basically, the last half of the final lap, he was coasting around, and once the Costa got through, he was able to pull away. But yeah, it was really caused by that final safety car period and the reduction. I think they changed the rules coming into Monaco. So if the safety car happened in the last 5 minutes, I think, because it was if it's after 40 minutes. Then they wouldn't do the reduction. It just in order to cover off the potential of a Valencia-style incident happening again, which I guess makes sense. In my mind, that's a little bit cautious. I think if it had gone over 5 minutes, I still would have loved to see the reduction happen. But that's just me personally. I can understand why they'd be cagey about that. But luckily, it was about 7 minutes to go. They were able to restart. I think Verne was the only one who still had attack mode left, but he wasn't quite able to use it because of the safety car. Funnily enough, the field was bunched up, so Verne couldn't quite get onto the podium. But still, very interesting end to the race. And Evans only just on the line got pipped by Robin Freins actually for second position. So I think Robin Freins, we were saying, might feel a bit aggrieved he didn't win, but he did very well actually to recover up to second by just getting Evans on the line, I think.
Yeah, because Mitch Evans said in his interview, Jack, afterwards, that he spent his energy in that attack modes phase, getting into the lead, and obviously the safety car didn't really help him because obviously he had that energy reduction, so that means he had less time to recover that energy, which caused that grandstand finish.
Well, yeah, and with Mitch backing everyone up, it actually made it so I believe over the line, Costa won by about 2.5 seconds, and over Freins. So Freins was 2.5 seconds behind, and then I think it was someone like Mortara or something who came 12th was 7.5 seconds behind. So you had 10 cars separated by 5 seconds. So I mean, like, in terms of like bunching up the pack to make it exciting towards the end of the race, fair dues Mitch Evans. Yeah, it was still an exciting race right to the end. I do feel that they need to properly analyse this. The energy reduction under the safety car. I'm not sure in terms of ideas or in terms of what they should do about it, but even when like Da Costa came over the line, it just about read 0.0, and same with Mitch and all that lot, and obviously that it's rounded to the nearest percentage, so it could be 0.03 or 0.02, which is fine, but yeah, I do feel that Formula E do need to do a little bit more investigating, because I feel like it's a good thing, but at the moment then it needs to be executed a little bit better than it currently is.
But surely that's what we want, right? Surely we want them finishing on 0%, because that makes it interesting. If they're finishing on 2%, they're basically flat out, right? And we don't get that last minute overtake. We don't get that run to the line excitement of who's going to finish where, and that's the beauty of the energy reduction system, is that we finish the race literally crossing the line using the maximum amount of energy. Because if we're finishing on 3 or 4%, then you're basically flat out for the last lap because you don't need to save.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jack. I think if they had not done the energy reduction, because I was worried that they might actually, because the race director can decide not to reduce energy if they're like at Scott Elkins, the race director's discretion. If they feel like maybe it's too close to the end, or they want to avoid a potential catastrophe or something like that. I was worried that they were going to do it, and I was relieved actually when they did, because I knew it was going to set up a really exciting finish. If they hadn't, Mitch Evans probably would have won, and Da Costa would be complaining that they've decided not to do reduction, and this time it's played against him, whereas before it was the other way around, where they reduced it and completely caught Da Costa out in the first race at Valencia in the rain. So yeah, good, by the way, to see Da Costa finally get his championship defence underway, because he is a really class driver. We haven't really seen it yet this season. There's a lot of atrocious luck. in the second race at Valencia, by the way, we didn't talk about it, but he had this thing where he was activating his attack mode because of an ergonomics issue. He kept nudging the button in his cockpit, and that was what caused him to get a penalty because he was using it when he wasn't supposed to be in attack mode, and ended up costing him a lot of points in Valencia. So good to see him finally get everything together.
And actually, in this race, we saw his teammate Jean-Eric Vergne have an issue with attack mode where he went to go through the activation zone and it didn't activate that first time. It didn't activate that first time. It only activated on the second or third attempts when he tried to do it a few times after.
Indeed. So where do we go from here, boys? Because
Puebla.
where you got me on that one. So Mercedes were the favourites, right? Going into this race, you could say, they were strong. They've been strong everywhere. They had that sort of blip in Valencia where they looked quick, but circumstances happened, and but we go to Monaco. You're thinking Mercedes, they're the front runners, and again, they have a difficult race weekend. They don't excel in qualifying. They start further back, and we know Monaco's difficult to overtake. Yes, we saw lots of overtakes, and I know we saw Sandberg get into the points, but Mercedes being like 16th and 19th on the grid, you're not expecting. I think Sam was 16th, so I think Van Dam was a bit further behind. You're not going to make miracles getting into the points. So do we think Mercedes are as good as we think they are? Do we think now going into Mexico that maybe Tech Cheetah and Jaguar are the favourites for the remainder of the season, and maybe they're the teams that might begin to pull away? Or do you think, Pico, that Mercedes are still in this fight?
Well, the beauty of Formula E is that you cannot call it. You can never call it. I think it's going to be really exciting between the Cheetahs and the Mercedes and the Jaguars. I think it'll be a little bit of an effort for any of the other teams to really fight in that championship now. Robin Freins obviously now leads the championship, so yeah, he is in that fight, but unfortunately Nick Cassidy's luck doesn't get any better, and so that's why the Envision Virgin team aren't in that fight for the championship. But yeah, I think it's going to be between those 7 drivers. I think even though that we're going to places like Puebla, which is a proper circuit, we're going to we're going to New York and London and Berlin. I mean, like London's going to be an interesting one. I can't wait to see how that fares out. Not just because we're from the UK, but yeah, because it's an indoor-outdoor track going through the XL, and then we got Berlin to finish off, and DS Cheetah were very strong around there last year. So who knows? I think we've now got this 6-week break, but when we return in a few weeks' time, it's gonna be game on once again.
And that's key. What you just said about Robin Freins there, Ed, is consistency so important still in Formula E? Because even though like Mercedes were quick and Jaguar were quick and Tech Cheetah are quick, it's none of their drivers are currently leading the Drivers' Championship. It's Robin Freins who has been super consistent. So yes, we may be expecting maybe a Jaguar, a Tech Cheetah driver, or a Mercedes driver to be lifting the championship, but could you see an outsider like Robin Freins, who is being consistent so far? If he can keep that consistency up, could you see him maybe lifting the title towards the end of the season?
It's a little bit against type, isn't it? Because usually when we think Robin Freins, we think him like in full opposite lock, sliding around, bashing into walls and getting on the podium despite the suspension being all out of whack, all sorts of spectacular heroics. We don't usually think Mr. Consistency keeps it out of trouble and gets the points and wins the championship because of that. But that's how he's playing it so far, and it really seems to be working out, at least for the moment. It would be incredible to have the first FIA Formula E world champion, be a driver that doesn't win a single race, finishes on the podium all the time. That would be quite something. So I'd be amazed if Robin Freins can pull it off. If anyone can, it would be Robin. The really interesting thing for me in terms of the constructors, especially, but also the drivers, is that we've got obviously the Cheetah. Their season 7 powertrain has now gotten them 2 wins since they've introduced it in Rome. So definitely with both drivers as well. So it definitely seems like Techeetah are doing the usual thing where they get on top of things mid-season and then start to get consistently really, really strong results. Nissan, well, I don't think we've seen the best of Nissan's powertrain either. We saw Roland miss out a little bit in Super Bowl because he basically they were recovering from red flag. He got into the car for Super Bowl after qualifying ended with like 80 seconds to go until the red light was called, and so he had to get back in the car and got caught out, and so he lost a position on the grid to Gunther because of that, and I think ended up finishing behind him in the race as well. So I don't think we've quite seen the best of Nissan Season 7 powertrain either, and that could really be a fly in the ointment for the likes of Jaguar and Mercedes as they're trying to use their powertrains they've been running since the start. They could have 4 cars in front of them they've got to negotiate for the championship, as well as Robin Franz, of course.
So then finally then, to wrap up the show, boys, Monaco in itself then, obviously a biannual event that happens every 2 years. But now that we've seen how amazing it is for Formula E and what a spectacle it was, do you think it has to have a place on the calendar every year, Pico? Or do you think if we keep having it as a biannual event, then maybe when we get to Monaco every 2 years, it will just be that little bit more special?
Yeah, I do see the reasoning behind that. However, I do like Monaco for the Formula E cars. I speak to people about Monaco these days, and yes, it's like the most prestigious race on the Formula One calendar. But it's like, okay, so I'll watch Saturday qualifying then. Yeah, and that's it. That all you need to do for that with F1. However, you do watch it on a Saturday with Formula E, but you watch qualifying and the race for that because they have produced such a fantastic race this weekend that if they were to put it as an annual event, I would not be frustrated at all. I think it'd be fantastic for them to do it every year. Obviously, they've got to sort out like the stuff with the Monaco Historique as well. Because that's what interchange is. However, this year they ran it. They ran the Monaco Historic a few weeks ago and did Formula E this weekend. So who knows? But yeah, I think if we did have Monaco on the calendar every year, that would be pretty damn cool.
Ed, your thoughts?
Well, I think the strength of Formula E calendar is its flexibility, right? In that it's a sort of case of, especially with travel restrictions and COVID and stuff, that it's a case of filling out the calendar as best you can. And I think there's a sense of maybe it was really good that we had Monaco as a single header. That felt a bit more special than having double headers at Monaco, which I guess in theory they could have done, but Monaco tend not to like doing that. Yeah, I think it was good also that we proved that Formula E can run on the full circuit, so it means they don't have to modify it, especially for Formula E as we saw in years past. And that helps in terms of Monaco GP Historic and F1 using the same layout. We know Prince Albert and his foundation are really big fans of electric cars and Formula E specifically, and good friends with Gag, of course, who's still got heavy links as a chairman of Formula E. So it could happen every year, but in my preference would probably be fill out the calendar with really, really interesting races, because obviously Monaco has all that prestige and glamour associated with Formula One. But for me, for Formula E, it's just a really good racetrack. So I don't care about all the yachts in the harbour or the celebrities trying to get there. Well, we wouldn't have any this year, of course, but in future seasons, you would assume more celebrities would show up to the Formula E race in Monaco. And we did have them before, like when we were using the British circuit. So yeah, but none that actually interests me is more the actual race. Just put the best race circuits on the calendar, and if Monaco can be on there, great. But if we can get races in new places, so let's say Tokyo, somewhere in Africa, Adelaide in Australia, just spitballing a few random venues, I would say great, and we'll go to Monaco next year. So I'm fine with biannual. If it's annual, great, because it's a great track for Formula E. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
And Vancouver, you could add to that list, because
well, that's true. There's a lot of buzz there.
To be fair, the Vancouver buzz has been going on since season 1 and season 2. I remember speaking to Elizabeth Ball, the Vancouver mayor. I don't know if she's still mayor, but there's always been interest in Vancouver for Formula E. It's not brand new, but it looks like it's definitely gaining traction now. But boys, thank you so much for joining me today.
All right, cheers. Thank you.
No worries. Until next time.
Until next time, indeed. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't mind Monaco as a yearly event, because I tell you what, I'm a big strawberry tart fan, and Monaco has the best. So Thank you so much for joining us for the FEZ show. We will be back in a little bit. We'll probably take a couple of weeks off. We'll come back. We'll preview the Mexico round, talk up any news, Gen 3 news. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, so we'll probably do a recap of all the latest news ahead of the Mexican E-Prix. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.